We're going to be talking a little bit about the BDCP. Let's operate under the premise for a moment that Delta farmers and residents generally oppose the twin tunnels, just as an assumption, a theory, and often contend that the conveyance of the CVP and the SWP water through the Delta is either taking their water or interfering with their ability to irrigate. However, the continuous movement of fresh water from the upstream reservoirs through the Delta maintains higher quality water with lower salinity in the Delta channels. In addition, in dry and critically dry years, when there would be virtually no flow from the Sierra Nevada, and most of the Delta would be too salty for irrigation use, the projects move good quality water through the Delta during the irrigation season, thus allowing more land in the Delta to be irrigated than occurred before the federal and state projects came online. Now, it's a long way to get to the question. Have Delta farmers benefited from these projects? And if so, how? Who wants to take that one? Be brave.
I'll be happy to take that one. Indeed, Delta farmers have benefited from the construction and operation of the Central Valley Project and the State Water Project. If you look at historical data concerning intrusion of salt or salinity into the Delta, prior to the construction and operation of the projects, salt would intrude into the Delta as far north as Freeport and as far south as the city of Stockton. And the movement of water through the Delta, from the Sacramento River to the pumping plants in the south part of the Delta, has significantly improved the quality of water beyond what it would be in a state of nature. The other thing I would observe is that there is frequently water in channels in the Delta that would not be there but for the operation of the projects. And this year is a perfect example. Today, as we're speaking, the natural inflow into the Delta would not support the diversion of water by water right holders, whether they're riparian water right holders or appropriative water right holders. And so when we hear people say that the BDCP has to be developed in a way that respects water rights, we are in complete agreement with that, because over the course of the last 50 years, there's been a significant loss of water because water users in the Delta are taking water that they otherwise would not have a right to take. And there are numerous water board decisions, court decisions that have attempted to stop that, but it's something that persists. But in response to your question, there have been benefits derived by irrigators in the Delta that result from the operation of these two projects.
Westlands Water District is by far the agency that has experienced the greatest negative impacts from the Delta water supply cutbacks over the last several years. No kidding. What short-term actions would you propose to provide water supply relief for the west side next year, aside from a small miracle?
Well, first, I have to take exception to your statement that Westlands is by far the agency that has been most impacted. Westlands, for reasons that I cannot explain, is a pretty easy target. I guess it's because of its size. But when you saw Joe Delbosky being interviewed in that video, Joe doesn't farm in Westlands Water District, he farms in San Luis Water District and Panoche Water District. And there are multiple water service contractors south of the Delta that have sustained the same type of damage that farmers in Westlands have sustained. They are from the city of Tracy all the way to Kettleman City. But going to your question about what do we do next year, and I suspect that is the issue that is on the minds of most of the people in this room. Our analysis shows that if we have an average year next year, the allocation for Westlands Water District and all of those other water service contractors south of the Delta will be zero. And it's very likely that the final allocation will be very low, anywhere from 0 to 10 to maybe 15%. which means that we are going to have a repeat of what we saw in 2009. Other than praying, and I'm a big believer in prayer, other than praying for heavy precipitation and snowfall, particularly in the San Joaquin River watershed, so that we can offset restrictions under the biological opinions in Old and Middle River flow, we have to, I mean, frankly, I don't know what can be done. Congressman Costa, who's just come into the room, has introduced legislation that would provide congressional direction on how the Endangered Species Act would be applied to the two projects. I know that last year the House of Representatives passed a bill that would have provided similar direction concerning the way in which the ESA would be applied to these two projects. But over the course of time, we have utilized all of the mechanisms available so that today there is very little flexibility concerning how we can get water to the farmers on the west side of the San Joaquin Valley. The video talked about water transfers. The video is correct. Westlands Water District is making water available for $375 an acre foot through its supplemental program. But there are farmers out there who've been paying $1,500 an acre foot for water. That's not sustainable. And so, I haven't answered your question well, Ray, but frankly, I'm at a loss to identify any tool that's available under the existing regulations that will ensure that there's an adequate supply of water to irrigate the west side of the San Joaquin Valley next year.
I wish I were a magician.
I know that every member of Congress that represents the Valley would make it rain if they could.
All right, identify yourself and ask away.
I'm Paulina Miranda from Fresno.
It's not on.
Sorry.
I'm Paulina Miranda from Fresno. Thank you very much for being here with us today. I'm very, very surprised to hear your comments. And I would like to know what kind of different regulations you need to help us. Which capacity? Which way? How we can help you to do your job? We need your help because we really need one here. Thank you.
There are numerous different types of regulations that could provide benefit. Let's look at the difference between 2009 and 2010. And I'm going to speak very frankly here. I may say some things that I shouldn't say. In 2009, we had a water supply of 10% on the west side of the San Joaquin Valley because under the biological opinions, the restrictions were imposed to the greatest extent possible. And there were members of Congress who went to the Department of the Interior and said, you have got to fix this. So in 2010, the projects were operated under restrictions imposed by the biological opinion at the upper end of the range. And the fish did just fine, and we got a 45% allocation. The difference between 2009 and 2010 hydrologically, is, in terms of rainfall, runoff, and water in the system, weren't that different. So one change in regulations that would provide protection for fish would simply be to say, we are going to operate the projects under the biological opinions at the upper range as opposed to the lower range. One of the issues that has been identified is predation. Now this is a longer term solution, but if we begin to focus on predation and ecosystem restoration, restore tidal marshland habitat in the Delta, which is one of the objectives of the BDCP, that will provide an environment in which the fish will do better, and there will be fewer restrictions imposed on the operations of the project. But for next year, what we need is a commitment from the fishery agencies that unless shutting down the pumps is absolutely necessary to prevent these species from going extinct, they're going to let the pumps operate. And under the law, they have the discretion to do that. That's what they did in 2009, in 2010 compared to 2009, and as a consequence, our water supply improved dramatically.
Inquietud por saber qué es lo que van a hacer para mejorar el agua en las comunidades, porque se nos figura que está baja de calidad. He's worried about the water in the little counties, like Mendota, Farmville, Kerman. The water is low, like in the quality of the water to drink.
There isn't any question that there are small, disadvantaged rural communities on the west side of the San Joaquin Valley that are feeling the brunt of the water supply shortages. The city of Mendota is a classic example. Kettleman City is another classic example. Kettleman City has horrendous problems. And Westlands Water District is immediately adjacent to Kettleman City. And Westlands Water District has said, if we have sufficient water, we will make water available to Kettleman City, but there have been bureaucratic nightmares trying to accomplish that. But the city of Mendota relies on groundwater. As farmers extract groundwater, that has an effect on water quality. And the farmers understand that. But the question that you're posing would be pretty easily resolved if, in fact, we had sufficient water. Westlands Water District has a contract for 1.193 million acre feet. Today, I think the farmers in Westlands could make a significant part of that water available for disadvantaged communities, but we have to have the water. And until we have a comprehensive solution that includes new conveyance, that would significantly improve the quality of water that's being delivered to cities like Coalinga, Huron, Avenal, until we have that new conveyance, the problem that you're describing is going to continue to get worse. And one of the things that we like to talk about is environmental justice. I'm the wrong guy to talk about environmental justice. But that's one of the factors that is often ignored by people who are making decisions that result in the cutback of water to the San Joaquin Valley. Jose Antonio Ramirez can address it much better than I can. He has experienced it. But the problem that you're identifying is a problem that is easily resolved if we have a reliable supply of water.